ሰላም የቻናላችን ተከታታዮች እንደምን አላችሁ? የ10ኛ ክፍል ፊዚክስ አዲሱ ካሪክለምን ዩኒት 1 ቬክተር ኳንቲቲስ በሚለው ዩኒት ውስጥ ትሪያንግል ሜተድ ኦፍ ቬክተር አዲሽን የሚለውን ሴክሽን ይዘንላችሁ ቀርበናል። እንደተለመደው ቻናላችንን ሰብስክራይብ፣ ላይክ ኤንድ ሼር እያደረጋችሁ እንድትከታተሉ እንጋብዛችኋለን። ትሪያንግል ሜተድ ኦፍ ቬክተር አዲሽን. Triangle law of vector addition is used to find the sum of two vectors. To find the sum of two vectors, the best law is triangle law of vector addition. How this law works? This law is used to add two vectors when the first vector head is joined to the tail of the second vector, and then joining the tail of the first vector to the head of the second vector to form a triangle. Let me show you with an example. Let's say this is vector A. This is vector A, which is the first vector. This is vector A. This vector has the initial point, which is a tail, and the final point, which is called the head. So this vector A. So the head of this vector, can be joined to the tail of the second vector. So the tail of the second vector will join to the head of the first vector, or the head of the first vector will be joined to the tail of the second vector. Then the resultant of the two vector is, which is the third vector, the vector that creates the triangle. In another way, the resultant vector, these two vectors can be joined. So the tail of the first vector, the tail of the first vector can be joined to the head of the second vector. In this case, we'll find what? The resultant. This is a triangle method. So if it is vector A and if it is vector B, this vector is the resultant vector, which is called A plus B. This is the sum of the two vectors. So this law can be used to our two vectors. So the first vector head is joined to the tail of the second vector, and then joining the tail of the first vector to the head of the second vectors. In this case, you will make a triangle, and you will obtain the resultant sum vectors. That's why the triangle of a vector addition is called the head to tail method for the addition of the vector. Why we call this method head to tail? Because the first vector head is joined to the tail of the second vector. That makes it triangle method of vector addition, the head to tail method. Let's see here an example. Figure 1.7 shows the triangle rule for the addition of the two vectors. Here you can consider the above vector like this. This is vector B, this is vector A. This is vector B, this is vector B. The horizontal is vector A, and the other one is a vector B. So you can join the head of the first vector with the tail of the second vector. So this head will be joined to the tail of this. How? Like this. In this fashion, what I do is the head of the first vector is joined to the tail of the second vector. To find the resultant vector, this resultant vector is A plus B, which is joining the tail of the first vector to the head of the second vector. This is the resultant vector, which is the sum of A and B. Here, let's consider activity 1.2. Consider adding two vectors A and B graphical. The two vectors are shown in the figure here, Using the above procedure of vector addition and these two vectors using a triangle law of vector addition, if the angle theta is 30. So here is vector B, which is 4 Newton, and it is 30 degree to the horizontal, and here is vector A 5 Newton. To find the resultant vector, you can use a triangle method, but to find the exact resultant, it's better to use a ruler and a protractor. A ruler, by using a ruler and a protractor, try to find the resultant of the vector A, which is 5 Newton, and vector B 4 Newton, which is 30 degrees to the horizontal. So use rulers and a protractor to find the resultant. But mathematically, how we are going to solve it and such kinds of addition, we are going to see in our later video. The other ways of vector addition is parallelogram method of vector addition. How parallelogram methods of vector addition works? Let's consider two vectors, which is vector A and B. How we are going to find the resultant vector, which is A plus B, using parallelogram. So let's consider these two vectors, vector A and B. Here I try to represent vector A and B here. This the horizontal one is vector A, and the other one is vector B. So this is vector A, this is vector B. So let us make a parallelogram. How we can make a parallelogram? By moving vector B to the tail of vector A, we make like this. And again, let's draw another line of the parallelogram, which is equal to in magnitude and direction with vector A. How we are going to draw it? So this vector is equal vector to this vector A, which are the same direction and magnitude. Let's draw another vector B, which is equivalent to this vector. This is vector B, and let's draw the vector which is parallel to and equal in magnitude to this vector. This is vector B. In this fashion, I make a parallelogram. So the resultant vector is here. This is the resultant vector. This resultant vector is, you can draw the diagonal. The diagonal is the resultant vector. Here is the diagonal. In this parallelogram, what I make is two triangles. Okay, I make two triangles. This resultant one is, if you consider the above triangle, this resultant is B plus A, because this is B, this is A, B plus A. And if I consider this triangle, this resultant is again A plus B. But mathematics is a communicative property, so A plus B equal to B plus A. So in this fashion, you can use a parallelogram method to add two vectors. ዛሬ ያዘጋጀንላችሁ ይሄን ይመስላል። በቀጣይ ቪዲዮ እስከምንገናኝ መልካም ጊዜ ይሁንላችሁ።